Grade 6s, we're going to now start with percentage. Now percentage is just another way of doing a fraction or a decimal fraction. So what's very important is the symbol for percentages. Here you go. This is how it looks. So as soon as you see this symbol, you know we are working with percentages. Now where does this word come from? Percent comes from the Latin word centum, and centum means 100. So when we work with percentages, we always have to work with 100. A percentage is a short form of writing fractions with a denominator of 100. So if we want to write any number as a percentage, we need to write it with a denominator of 100. So if we work with fifths or quarters or halves, we need to change the denominator to 100. And we do that using equivalent fractions. So firstly, we're going to use our common fractions and then change that to percentages. So a percentage is a fraction that always has 100 as a denominator. One has to make sure that the denominator is 100. So that's very important. If we have 1%, we will then say that is equivalent to 1 out of 100. So 1/100. If we have a denominator of 25, we need to multiply it with 4 to get to 100. If we have a denominator of 20, we need to multiply it with 5 to get to 100. And if we have a denominator of 50, we need to multiply it with 2 to get to 100. So whatever our denominator is, we need to get it to 100 to make a percentage. If you cannot convert the denominator to 100, you can simply multiply by 100 times 1. So you can also do that. So here's an example. 3/4. We multiply with 25. You can just add that to your worksheet. You multiply by 25, you get 75 out of 100, which equals 75%. So we had a denominator of 4, which we then converted to 100, and then it became 75%. Remember, what you do at the bottom, you must also do at the top. So we change a common fraction to a percentage by using the denominator of 100 and only 100, nothing else. When we get to decimal fractions, we also use 100. So percentage is 1/100. Therefore, we should first find out how many hundredths there are in a decimal number before we can say what the percentage is. For example, 0.25 is equal to 25 hundredths, which equals to 25%. We can also have an example like 0.3. You can just add that to your notes. What do we do if we have 0.3? We make it 100 by adding a 0. Then we have 30 hundredths, which is 30%. So if you receive a decimal fraction, make sure it has 2 places after the comma, which indicates your hundredths. If it doesn't, you can just add a 0, and then you already have your digit out of 100. So it's 30 out of 100, which is 30%. After you've pasted in the explanation note, you must make the following notes in your books. Your heading, make the denominator 100, and you can make that 100 stand out by either putting a block around it or writing it in color. So you will see the Afrikaans heading is there as well, but you write the English heading, make the denominator 100. And then I want you to write down the following 9 examples. So the first one is 3/25, 12/20, 35/50, 3/10, 2/5, 3/4, 1/2, 18/30, and 8/40. Okay, so please write those 9 examples. What needs to happen? We need to change the denominator to 100 in order for us to write these fractions as a percentage. So we have 3 25ths. So that means we need to change this 25 to 100. And we can do that by multiplying it with 4. And remember what we do at the bottom, we must also do at the top. So please write these numbers in color. Times 4 times 4 equals to 12 hundredths. So 3 times 4 is 12 and 25 times 4 is 100. And 12 out of 100 equals to 12%. So if we have 100, then we immediately just convert it to percentage. Here we've got 12 out of 20. We need to change it to 100. So we say 20 times 5 and then 12 times 5. That gives us 60 out of 100. And that gives us 60%. 35 over 50. What do we need to do with 50? We need to multiply it with 2. And we do it the same at the top. We take the 35 times 2 and we get 70 out of 100, which is 70%. 3/10, we can multiply with 10 to get 30 out of 100, which is equal to 30%. 2/5, what can we do with a denominator of 5? To get it to 100, we multiply with 20. And then we do the same at the top. 2 times 20 gives us 40 out of 100, which equals to 40%. So every time we change our denominator to 100, and then we get the percentage. The next example is 3/4. You should know by now that that is 75 out of 100 without even doing the conversion, and that's 75%. Same with 1/4, you will know is 25%, which is 25 out of 100. A half, you can also easily now convert to 50 out of 100. That gives you 50%. 18 out of 30 and 8 out of 40. Now these denominators are not your usual denominators. If you cannot take it to 100, you must try and take it to 10 and then convert it back to 100. So you can divide the 30 with 3 and the 18 as well to get to 6/10. And as soon as you have a 10th, you know you can take it to 100 again by multiplying with 10. So if you cannot take the 30 directly to 100, try and make it smaller, like to a 10th or a 5, and then make it bigger to 100. So 18 out of 30 is equal to 6 out of 10 because you divided it with 3, and then you can multiply it with 10 again to make it 60 out of 100, which gives you 60%. The same with 40. We made it smaller, so we said divided by 4. The denominator and the 8 can both be divided by 4, which gives us 2 out of 10 or 2/10. And if we have 2/10, we can just multiply it with 10 again to get to 100 and then to get to 20. So 20 out of 100 is 20%. So you need to look at the denominators given and see what can you do to change that denominator into 100. But remember, you cannot add or subtract. You can only multiply or divide. And what you do at the bottom, you must also do at the top. You cannot divide by 4 and divide by 8. You have to do the same calculation every time. And there will always be a way that you can get to 100. Please make sure you have written down all the examples, all the calculations, all the fractions, and all the percentages.